not only Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, there are other places in Canada. Sure, it's by definition the Dutch disease. The Canadian dollar is being held artificially high, which is fine if you're going to Walt Disney World, not so good if you want to sell your manufactured product because the American client, most of the time, can no longer afford to buy it. We've hollowed out the manufacturing sector. In 6 years since the Conservatives have arrived, we lost 500,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs, more than half of them because of the fact that we're not internalizing the environmental costs. At the present time, the way we're exploiting and developing the oil sands is causing an imbalance in our economy.
Well, I'm joined right now by a man who disagrees with Thomas Mulcair. His name is Premier Brad Wall, the Premier of Saskatchewan. Welcome back to the show, Premier.
Thanks for having me on, Ezra.
You know what? It's stunning to hear it said by a man of such high office. He thinks that literally hundreds of thousands, you heard him, he said half of all manufacturing job losses in Canada over the last half decade. Half of those jobs, hundreds of thousands, are because of people working in the oil sands. I don't even know how he gets from A to B, but there he is. What do you make of that, Premier?
Ezra, it's nonsense. Even Dutch disease as an economic principle has come under a lot of scrutiny lately in terms of now the strength of that particular economy relative to the rest of Europe, and even the midterm strength of the economy after the currency changed. To blame Western natural resources for our exchange rate increases is also facile, because, as you know, we've had some other economic factors around the world, including what's happened with our largest trading partner, including the boom in China that has a lot to do with, it has impact on our currency and currencies around the world. And so on so many levels, the argument's wrong. Here's another point, Ezra, that I think was made also by Professor Jack Mintz in an op-ed piece not long ago, and that is this, that if it's the Western resources of our country that are to blame for the decline in the manufacturing sector in Ontario, why is that decline mirrored in places like in the Rust Belt in the United States, in places like Ohio and Michigan, because they've seen a similar decline? That might have something to do with China as well. That might have something to do with what happened to the world economy in 2009 and what was happening before that in terms of some outsourcing that happened in a lot of the Western economies. It's economic nonsense, really.
It's a grand conspiracy theory is what it is. It's a conspiracy theory. Anything that goes wrong in Ontario or Quebec, blame the oil sands. You know, it's not sound economics. But Premier, here's the crazy part. Let's just, for the sake of debate, pretend he was right. Let's pretend he was right. The question is, so what would he do about it if he actually believed that the success of your province, Saskatchewan, and Alberta was to blame for Ontario and Quebec? What would he do? I mean, seriously, is he calling for a shutdown? Do you think he's even thought this through, Premier? I mean, this is a man who's a heartbeat away, in a manner of speaking, from being Prime Minister. Has he thought it through?
I think he has thought it through, Ezra. I think he's mused in the past about, and he did, in fact, in that interview that you just played a clip from, when he talks about internalizing the environmental costs of the natural resource industry. That is, you know, that I hear carbon tax when I hear that. I hear NEP-style policies when I hear that, and it's not just the oil sands; it's resources, and so that's potash, where we're happy to have 53% of the world's supply in our province, and $12 billion worth of expansion underway. And, you know, I think there's another problem here. The words he chose, this economic theory that's come under question lately, includes the word disease.
Yeah.
Well, you know, those of us out west, I think quite rightly can take and should take some offense to that, because that disease is creating jobs for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. That disease is creating manufacturing jobs in his home in Ontario. That disease is helping funding social programs through equalization in his home province of Quebec, where they can keep tuition low, even with these recent increases, lower than the rest of the country. $8 billion in equalization, indirectly at least, comes from the strength of the Western resource economy. And you know, I was shocked at the comments, shocked at his paper, frankly, in March when he was running for the leadership, titled, I think that article was titled "The Tar Sands: Dirty Oil and Canada's Future."
Yeah, Canada's shame.
I think Canada's shame to the highest office.
Yeah. He called it a shame. Here's the Premier. I checked into it. I contacted Mulcair's office. He has never even visited the oil sands. He disparages it. He calls it dishonorable. He calls it a disease. He has never visited it with his own eyes. Do you think that that's on purpose? Because if he had to face people in the resource industries in your province of Saskatchewan or in Alberta, he would find it morally harder to disparage them as a disease or as dishonorable? Or is it just he just doesn't want facts to complicate his simple theory?
Well, it's difficult to characterize something as a disease when you see it up front, and you see that it's creating jobs for Canadians from coast to coast to coast, as I say, when you see it's attracting new investment to the country in a world that increasingly wants food security and energy security. I like Western Canada's chances, but not if we see the kinds of policies that he hints at implemented as an aspirant to the Prime Minister's office. I think that's an important point to be made here. Here's one other point, Ezra. Since I made my comments, I sent out a tweet, and there's been some coverage. Thanks for having me on your show. Your network's been covering it. All the mainstream media have been covering this now, and not a word from him. I think he sent out a member of Parliament yesterday to comment about the issue. I think this is important. This goes to the national interest. This is a part of the economy that's working well and giving us a bit of a Canadian advantage at a time when a lot of countries would like any advantage at all. And he needs to come out and explain what he means. And he needs to tell that to Western Canadians, and more importantly, he needs to tell it to really the entire country, because this is a national issue, and this goes to right now a real advantage that we have going in the country, and we ought not to squander.
Premier, you're right, we're out of time. You've talked about the economics, but at the end of the day, it's a national unity issue too. Do we really want a national leader who pits one region of the country against another? That's just as important as the economic junk science he's bringing. Premier, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule today.
Happy to be here, Ezra. Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.